US small arms in World War II are often seen as the best, and I won't dance around it, we all know why. The US was unique among the major and minor powers in that it was able to give nearly all riflemen a semi-automatic rifle. I say nearly all because there's still examples where other rifles were issued. Here are US troops coming ashore with bolt-action rifles. And allies tended to get older stuff. Sorry Brazil, you get the Springfield. But the vast majority, nearly all, got a fancy self-loading rifle where everyone else had some flavor of bolt-action rifle that was a play on basically what they had in World War I. Other self-loaders did exist and were adopted. Soviets even beat the US to this, but neither they nor Germany managed to make these rifles their main infantry weapon and had to fall back on older designs heavily. So, this is great, although it was a bit heavy. That makes sense though, more moving parts, all that, so what about everything else? Well?
Now here we have my personal favorite, the M1919A430 caliber machine gun.
The Browning is a great heavy machine gun. On a tripod, water-cooled, you can shoot forever. In a vehicle? Fantastic. But these guys had to jump out of airplanes with them. And this is something you see sometimes in US procurement. Here's this great thing, but we're dealing with new concepts like paratroopers and fast maneuver warfare, so how do we make this large box fit with that? And it's there that some weapons can come up lacking. I'll get to you in a second. Before the war, the Germans hit on a universal machine gun concept that they used through the war that said basically the same gun, depending on how it's mounted, would fulfill multiple roles. The US tried to do this, but stupid. Basically, because there's a war on, here's what we got, a really good machine gun, but we're also gonna need a light machine gun, we'll make it work. Meanwhile, everyone else has a weapon purpose-built for this role, and they're a lot better at it. And sometimes really cool. Just look at that thing, I want one. Sorry though, pal, you gotta lug the box through France. A weapon designed for World War I that you're just kind of gonna have to put up with as a light machine gun, and it's a bit heavy.
The purpose of what I'm trying to illustrate to you here today is to show you.
I love the Thompson. If I could snap my fingers and own a gun, it would probably be a Thompson. I would even argue that as far as iconic American World War II guns go, it might be more so even than the Garand. It's kind of the quintessential good guy gun with the MP40 as its opposite. Well, good guy gun in our post-World War II world. Before, it's kind of a different story. We tend to think of the Thompson's contemporaries as being these, the other submachine guns of the Second World War. But in reality, it was these, the submachine guns of World War I and the early interwar era. This weapon was a pioneering early submachine gun, designed when this was a pioneering concept. Initially the Annihilator, it was an old, first-generation, very complicated to produce, and expensive gun compared to its World War II counterparts that were mostly some flavor of tube with a bolt that goes back and forth, made of cheap stampings. The government ordered Thompson guns of various models through the interwar era, always complaining about the price, and it was really expensive. It was finally simplified about as much as it could have been by wartime, but with this receiver shape and design, there's only really so much you can do. Is it a nicer gun than its friends? Yeah, but they all spray bullets about the same. This was recognized when the US adopted late in the war, basically a tube with a bolt that went back and forth. And it was perfectly serviceable and easy to make. Anyways, the Thompson was an old gun that just kind of stuck around long enough to have its heyday pretty much 20 years after it had any business doing so. Also, it was a bit heavy.
The Browning automatic rifle is proving its worth. It's good, but you can't describe a rifle merely by saying it's good.
The BAR at the time of design was the best in its class in its intended role. The only problem is the concept behind it was stupid. This is walking fire, the Entente's answer to how to keep up suppressive fire during a charge across no man's land and to break stalemate. The Germans figured out a better approach. But that's neither here nor there. That was the idea behind the BAR and what it was built for. But again, the war ended before any real number of them could actually go do that. And then it just kind of hung around for 20 years. I mean, we did build thousands of the things, might as well use them in your new war. Where should they go, though? We do kind of have this gap in machine gun capability, see earlier with the Browning. Why not shove it into some kind of squad automatic light machine gun role? And oh boy, shove they did. If the 1919 was in some ways overqualified to be a light machine gun, the BAR in the same line of thinking was underqualified. With a 20-round magazine and never really being designed for sustained fire, this is the worst example of something from World War I being applied in a modern way. Well, modern. Also,
Say the line, Bart!
it was a bit heavy. The World War I version was heavy as it was, and to fit into its new role, the only thing that could really be done was adding stuff to it. I actually have a personal connection to this. My grandfather had a BAR in the Pacific, and in the few instances he would actually talk about the war, he would always, completely unprompted, talk about the weight of the thing as if God had cursed him with it. Now, am I saying US weapons were universally bad? No, and if you already commented that, delete it because you didn't finish the video. They obviously did the job. But unlike the US of today, the US of the past did not prepare for war very well and would kind of join a war, look around and say, all right, what do we got? At least in effect. Ahead in some areas and just kind of scrambling in others and developing where they could. Almost always in very short order, which oftentimes had fantastic results. For example, they come up with a whole new class of weapon and concept in the middle of the conflict and make unironically millions of them. Although if you're going to talk about weapon concepts, just look at what the Germans came up with. That sounded sarcastic. It's not. Good job, the Germans. It's just that when it's the Depression, not wartime, it's very difficult to put money and time into newer, cutting-edge weapons like a decent light machine gun. Although that changed real quick when the Cold War started. Night and day at the approach to this thing. Sorry.